Hi, everyone. My name is Aman Haq. With me, I have Arna Biswas, and we are happy to be joining you today for the iOS, iPadOS, and macOS AMA session. Here we have Joe, our host. He's here now and ready to comment if he has anything to say.
Oh, well, I'm just joining, so I appreciate. I'm sorry I'm late. I just had to restart my internet, so hopefully it doesn't give up again. What
Oh,
did
no,
I miss? Anything? What did I miss?
nothing too big. I think we're just about to kick off the first question. So the first
Cool.
question from Jason is, why does read registration of the same device generate a new account in AAD? Arnav, do you have
Yeah, I can take that one. This is really a question about Azure Active Directory. So the goal of Azure Active Directory device registration is to create the device record in Azure, which is used for granting conditional access to devices. And so it's important that every time a new ID is generated, it is unique for able to track those devices. So Intune actually has, or AAD has two concepts. One is actual creation of the device ID, and one is patching. Patching is only done when there is some issue with a particular registration, and we need to repair that registration. But anytime the user actually goes and hit the device registration action, that will always create a new device ID to make sure that it is unique from the other device IDs that are created.
Thanks. And just in case we do introductions when I was away? Did you all introduce yourselves? If not, Arnab, since you were just talking, why don't you tell everyone who you are and what you do?
Yes, of course. Hi, my name is Arnav Biswas. I am a senior product manager in the Apple MDM team, specifically focused on leading out our Mac management solution in Intune.
Thank you.
and I'm Aman Haq. I work on iOS, I work on enrollment, I work on Frontline Workers. So if you have any questions about that, I'm especially happy to talk about it. But any other general questions, iOS or macOS related, we're also happy to take.
Great. I did see a couple of questions come in, but before we get to those questions, I think I'm going to ask you both. You know, WWDC, Apple's big conference was a couple of weeks ago. Is there anything exciting you about what they announced or what we're doing with Intune?
Yeah,
I'll start with you, Aman.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of exciting stuff. I think that if you look at they announced account-driven device enrollment, which is essentially they make enrollment easier because instead of taking a few different screens, and they make it one button essentially. So they had that for user enrollment for a little while now, and now they're bringing it into device enrollment, which I think will answer hopefully some key concerns from customers. Other than that, we've seen some updates for shared iPad. So those two things I think are what I'm most excited about for WWDC.
Great. Arnab, any news that you heard that you're waiting to get into the product?
Yes, I mean, in general, it was just great to see Apple really announce a lot of enterprise features this WWDC. And within that, I think my personal favorite was just more items coming to Platform SSO. And it is exciting because Platform SSO, we are kind of starting to roll out what we have been working on based on what Apple announced last year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just great to see that Apple really investing more in that area and providing a lot of additional features. So yeah, that is really the most exciting thing for me.
I know for a lot of you out there, the most exciting thing is the Vision Pro, right?
Oh, everyone's talking. Yeah, exactly.
That's all I keep hearing about. Yeah, that's all I keep hearing about as well.
Yeah, no management yet, but yes,
yeah, there's no management.
It is
for
a
those.
cool
Yeah,
concept.
so a lot of my customers have asked me, when are we going to be able to manage those? As soon as Apple gives us a management API, we'll be able to start working with it. So, all right, let's get back to questions. We got a question from Peter about Jamf. So I'm hoping maybe, Arnab, you can help answer that. But can Intune integrate with an on-premises Jamf and still use the Intune feature set to support Jamf? Or is there some kind of guide for that?
Interesting. So let's see, for an So this is, I'm guessing this is, so on-prem Jamf is Jamf Pro. So if there are Jamf Pro instances, I believe they still need to be connected to a Jamf connector, or sorry, the Jamf Cloud connector, which is their cloud version of it. And that can then be linked to the Intune, in our Intune partner device management or partner compliance management to then be able to talk to it.
You know, what's interesting is Tyler was going to be hosting this, and Tyler actually got jury duty. Good for him, doing his civic duty. And so he asked me to pull up, but if to host. But if Tyler were here, he could actually talk more about that partner device management, partner compliance management, because he owns those with Jamf, right?
Yes,
it's a good question.
Yeah,
so we can do some follow-ups. Hopefully the people that are, we have not just the three of us, there's other people listening in and answering questions. Hopefully one of them can expand on that answer if necessary, or Aman or Anab, if you had more to answer that. Well, we can go to the next question.
Yeah, and in case there's anything like that moving forward, we can definitely follow up and get back to people. And we're happy to have you, Joe. It's
I'm happy to be here. I had a lot of fun in the last one. I'm actually hosting the next one as well. So everyone that's listening in, they'll see me again in an hour after this. So, but thanks. It's fun to be here. We got another question that came from Shrikant, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. How can we wipe data off of the Apple devices which are already using organizations' emails for existing employees? So again, how can we wipe off data from Apple devices which are already using the organization's emails on your existing employees? Is there a nice, easy button for that?
Are they trying not to get rid of the email? Or I know we have remote wipe options available for most enrollment types. So if they're saying that they want to wipe it, but not wipe the email?
Yeah, it's a good question, needing clarity on that. So if you could, follow up with some clarity on, are you asking about removing the corporate devices on a personal email? Are you talking about wiping personal information on a corporate email, wiping the whole device? Yeah, it's a good point that, maybe a little clarity might be needed. We have a question that came in from Robert about Mac devices. For Mac devices, is there a plan to allow changing the primary user in the Intune console, which currently can be done with Windows devices? There are many situations where the Intune licensed user changes on a device, and it's painful workflow to retire the device, then have the new device re-enroll simply to change the primary user. This leaves the device unmanaged by MDM during the unenroll re-enroll. Is there an easier way to just change that primary user on a Mac device, or is that coming?
Yeah, so that's a good point. So today there isn't. It is true. So I mean, primary user.
I'm sorry, those exiting employees, not existing employees, on that last question. But anyway, go ahead.
So yes, for primary Mac devices. So the idea is, if you are enrolling a device with device affinity, the primary user on that device is actually put in to the enrollment profile that comes down to the device. So every time the device is checking in, it's able to prove that, hey, this is the primary user on that device. So there is really a very tight relationship with the enrollment and the user when you're setting it up. Which is partly the reason why it's hard to change that relationship today. Now, with Apple's introduction of platform SSO, we actually have another way to see, who is the user that is logged into the device. So this is certainly something we are starting to look at as to what should the experience be if there are multiple users signing on that device, and if it is, whether the device needs to be tightly tied to a single user or not. So today it's not possible, but I could see that certainly, I think with Apple making it easier to have a cloud user tied to the local account and be able to prove who is trying to check in to Intune, we could make that bond between the enrollment profile and the primary user a little less tight than we have today.
It is great feedback, and we just put the link, aka.ms Intune feedback. It's great feedback. Keep sending us that feedback and other feedback as well. Aman, I'm going to come back to
That's
Srikant's
what I was going to say.
question, and I'm going to reread it correctly this time because it was exiting employees, not existing. But how can we wipe off data from Apple devices which are already using organization emails for exiting employees? These are BYOD devices, and they're looking to remove the corporate work data.
Yeah, so the way I understand this question, it's essentially you have your employee, you give them a bunch of new applications and data, let's say VPN potentially, profiles, and you want to remove all that organization so that it goes back to their device before they enrolled. And I am not aware of any way of easily doing that in a normal BYOD device. Obviously, for things like shared iPad or shared device mode, that organization versus private partition is very clearly defined and we can act on it, but I'm not aware of it. I'll double check with other folks, and if we have any updates, we'll reach out.
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah, I have a slightly different take on that question. Okay. So to add on to what Aman is saying, so I think there could be two scenarios here. So one recommendation is if you have a device where both corporate and personal data are coexisting, our recommendation usually is to use app protection policies on Microsoft 365 apps. That is really the easiest way to create and live with the data separation and without touching the device from a device management perspective. And really from a user experience perspective, it's super straightforward. We really see this as the primary way customers like to provide BYOD support to iOS users who want to access their corporate resources on personal devices. And of course, if then the next a little more management piece that comes into play is user enrollment, which is Apple's recommended way for managing work data on personal devices. And that would create clear separation between your work data and personal data. The organizational data is kept cryptographically separate and could be removed as needed without really touching the user's personal data.
Yeah, no, that's a great addition, Arnab. I appreciate it. I was looking at it from like a pure enrollment lens, but obviously MAM is a key part of our BYOD scenario. So if you use MAM with each of the organization's apps, you'd get a very similar functionality as that quick wipe of only organization data.
Yeah, it's a good call out as well.
Yeah, and another thing I love about MAM is that you don't, if you want, you can use just MAM, and if you need more control, you can have both device management and layer MAM on top of that. So you still get the protection, the data separation and protection that MAM provides within NVM.
Thanks. We have a question coming in from David. We're going to move a little bit. This is almost an Intune question more than iOS or macOS. But David's asking, when we use filters, and I'm assuming he's talking about assignment filters. When we use filters, we occasionally see issues where the filter won't apply due to conflicts, despite no obvious conflict. Is there any way we can see exactly what that conflict is? Something similar to the conditional access what if tool that would be helpful to troubleshoot where filters are not applying. One thing I'm going to say before you speak, Aman, is I don't know if David, if you haven't taken a look at the new troubleshooting blade, we've kind of reworked that a little bit. So you can type in the device name and see all the policies assigned, see all the user and the groups that it's in. And the troubleshooting blade's been kind of redesigned to help with some of this stuff. Go ahead with how you're going to answer it.
Yeah, I was going to say that we'll take this feedback back to the Intune team in terms of it's a bit more general, so we can't speak specifically to timelines or when it's going to get fixed, but we'll reach out to the SMEs when it comes to filtering and hopefully get a response to you soon.
Yep, thanks. And we have an iOS question that came in as well. Will we be seeing better integration with Intune and Azure? Currently, Azure MFA, multi-factor authentication, is problematic when using ADE or Apple Automated Device Enrollment. CA, conditional access, lots of acronyms here. Conditional access should allow us to exclude ADE devices, but Azure is unable to see device information prior to enrollment, forcing that MFA. It would be nice to allow MFA on personal enrollment and no MFA on corporate or ADE devices.
Yeah, that feedback's well taken. We will work with AAD. I think that I understand the requirements there. Obviously, ADE devices are different from BYOD, and not forcing MFA is, I mean, it's well taken. We'll work with AAD to hopefully get that sorted out. But the same thing with the filter question, I can't exactly tell you when it's going to happen because we're relying on other folks and other teams here.
It's important, right? Because we're one Microsoft, we do work very closely with the, we have the Intune Apple team that works very closely with Azure AD and very closely with other teams within Microsoft, but we also work very closely with Jamf and with Apple and with other, with our partners as well. We get things into Intune, after Apple releases or after Jamf does something, or maybe Azure AD needs something, and same thing with Windows, but we need the Windows team and Android as well. So it's a good point to bring up.
I'm going to throw a wrench in this question, and yes, MFA is great, and we have been suggesting to customers to use MFA, but the direction that both Apple and in general the industry seems to be moving towards is passwordless, and I think what we're going to see more and more is that our recommendations and business processes are also going to adopt that. And especially if I'm talking about Mac, then with Platform SSO, it has support for not just using your device password, but also for secure enclave cryptographic keys. And with macOS Sonoma, Apple has now added support for smart card. So really, there are going to be a lot of options that are more phish resistant and better than MFA in the future. So I think that's also certainly something to keep in mind as you're planning out your authentication scenarios.
I don't think that throws a wrench in that at all. I think that's a great solution moving forward.
QR code, voice, video. I mean, there are a lot of things being thrown out, but yeah.
I love this next question that came in because it's Intel versus ARM. And traditionally, you didn't get a lot of Intel questions when we talk about macOS. But will there be a method of identifying Intel versus ARM Macs in Intune? Some app developers don't yet provide universal binaries of their apps and require separate installs. Not all apps run under Rosetta, and it's very difficult to scope deployments. Are we coming up with a filter for that so we can filter to only ARM or only Intel devices?
Yes, this is a good piece of feedback. We do not have a solution using filters right now for this particular problem. But yeah, I acknowledge. Yeah, this is a piece of feedback that we have been hearing about, and we will certainly take into account as we improve. In fact, we are making a ton of improvements in our macOS app management area. So yes, this is something we will certainly consider in the near future.
I mean, even within Microsoft, right? I mean, 8-9 years ago, there were not a lot of Microsoft people using Mac devices because they just weren't allowed to. But today, there's thousands, right? Tens of thousands of Mac devices at Microsoft. Yep, join our new community, aka.ms Mac admins. And anyway, so within Microsoft, we eat our own dog food. We use Intune to manage our Mac devices, and everything that we're giving to the customers, we're doing internally as well. It's great feedback because it helps us internally as well, for sure. We do have another roadmap question. I'm not sure if you can give a general idea or an actual answer. When will we be having shared iPhone mode similar to shared iPad mode?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's something that I think is best addressed by Apple, since we are dependent on the Apple OS supporting it. I promise you, I've had multiple conversations with them sharing similar sentiment, and we have not gotten anything specific to share yet. But as soon as they've flipped the switch on the Apple side, Intune will rush to support shared iPhone.
Yeah, another good point, because we rely on what Apple gives us. As we said before, like the Vision Pro. As soon as Vision Pro has a management API, we'll be able to add a management API into Intune. Same thing, shared iPhone. As soon as Apple gives us shared
Exactly.
iPhone capabilities, we'll be able to manage shared iPhones.
Because it's an OS construct that we're just letting
Mhm.
up from our end.
Yep, for sure. Danny's asking about another question about BYOD, or bring your own device, iOS devices. We have issues with BYOD devices stopping, syncing, and apps not deploying at all. Support doesn't know why. Will the new BYOD changes help resolve these issues? It's kind of a general question.
Yeah. Until we know more about what the actual issues are and what the BYOD changes you're referring to are in terms of the new enrollment types or MAM updates, it's difficult to give a precise answer here.
I think in general, though, what we are really looking forward to is declarative device management, and Apple's has announced the expansion of that across the board, really iOS and macOS, and that is really very exciting for us, because it really moves the burden of talking to the device and keeping it up to date from the server to the device. So the device knows what is the desired state that it needs to be in without talking to the server. So we believe a lot of these reporting issues and just what is the current status of the device are going to be significantly improved as we continue to adopt declarative device management across our management stack.
Yeah, I think in our tech community, we have a blog where it talks about the declarative device management on Apple. We can get that link. I should have had it handy, and I don't. I apologize. But we do talk a little bit about that in one of our, I think Andy wrote a blog on some of the new things coming with Mac management, maybe in October-ish timeframe. We can find that link. So we have a question that came from Boru. Is it possible to mount, and this is interesting, is it possible to mount a persistent SMB share or like a Windows folder share, I believe, path to profiles upon login with Intune? Is there a way could you do that with a web link, or could you do that with some other way to mount an SMB share upon logging into an Intune enrolled device, Mac device?
I'm not sure I can answer that. This might be something we can follow up.
Yeah, we can follow up. We'll if you want to DM Boru, if you want to direct message one of us, we can follow up with you directly. Or we can answer it in the comments in tech community as well. So question: Intune macOS application deployment is rather basic. That's a feedback. Are there any plans to integrate Monkey into Intune for better application deployment, akin to simple MDM Monkey integration? And this was echoed by another community member here as well. So when we think about Monkey and integrating Monkey, what are we doing to improve that application experience?
Yeah, let me rewind a little bit and talk about where we were and how far we have come and where we're going. App deployment is my personal favorite area to talk about, because I have personally done a lot to bring it forward. And yes, I want to hear feedback how we can take this further and really meet the customer requirements that your environment demands. So yes, in terms of the macOS app deployment, so in the past, we used to have the app wrapper that used to cause a lot of friction that we successfully replaced by just doing server-side app parsing. And then we also looked at how do we expand our the types of apps that are supported on macOS beyond just what is deployable with the MDM commands. So that meant building a new pipeline using our Intune agent on macOS that was supporting the deployment of DMG apps that contained .app applications. And that again made it simpler for IT admins to not have to convert applications that were in other formats to PKGs, which was the sole format that was deployable in Intune back in the day. And once we added DMG, we then started looking at, okay, like the PKG applications, while we support that, but it really leaves a lot to be desired out of a complex business environment where you could have apps that you have developed and you may not have a certificate. It might be an unsigned app. You could have apps that you have received from a vendor and has multiple component packages, and you just want to be able to pull one out and deploy that. And a lot of these complex scenarios were not supported using our MDM install path. So what we are actively working on, and we expect to roll this out in our July Intune update, is the ability to deploy more flexible PKG applications. So this will basically use the Intune agent to deploy PKG applications, and that really opens the door for allowing you to install unsigned applications, any component packages, and so on. And another area that this really helps with is deploying pre and post-install scripts. So oftentimes we hear about applications that require some custom script to be run for license activation or to check what previous version you might have, and depending on that, the installer would do different things. And those are really key scenarios that this will unblock. Now, in the July release, our goal is to first put in your hands the PKG installer, which is at parity with what we have available today. So it will use the Intune agent to install the app, but it does not yet have support for custom pre and post install scripts. But that is something that we want to fast follow. But the idea is to really make sure that you have these kinds of capabilities built into Intune. And I'm happy that you talked about Monkey, because Monkey is something we hear about a lot, and Monkey was something we really looked at before building it into Intune. And we considered Monkey and thought that it will still be a better experience if we simply built it into our own agent, rather than putting down another agent onto the device. And we believe this will create a better experience. And of course, this is not saying that we will end here. We want to continue to hear from you about what are the other scenarios that you need in your app use cases and how we can further improve that. So please, as we release this, check it out, use it, give us feedback, what is working, what is not, what can we do more, so we can continue to improve the apps area.
Yeah, for sure. Again, aka.ms Intune feedback. We'll have that scrolling on the screen. And you were talking about, what's coming in July, and to find out what else is coming, you can always come to aka.ms Intune in dev, and we'll put that here right as soon as the Intune feedback is gone. aka.ms Intune in dev, or our what's new pages as well, which you can find from the navigation column in that same page. All right, so thank you for that. I'm going to go back to sort of coming back to the question that was asked earlier about the frontline worker or the shared device. We got a question from Twitter which kind of expands on that. And what scenarios does Intune provide for frontline workers on iOS? And it is one of your things that you work with, Aman. So what scenarios do we provide for frontline workers?
Yeah, Joe, that would be bad, huh, if I drew a blank here. So for frontline workers, we have two big offerings right now. I think the first was shared iPad, and many folks have, I think that got alluded to in the last question in terms of when are we getting something like shared iPhone. But given that we don't have a timeline for shared iPhone yet, we also have this concept called shared device mode. And this works both on iOS and iPadOS. And what it does is really answer what we think the three key asks for frontline workers are, which is number one, an easy and fast and secure sign in process to all their organizational apps and other things that they require on the device, a robust management of, again, being able to push down the applications that you need and interact with the requirements that your org has. And finally, a simple sign out that maintains all the security and privacy guarantees that you've come to know and expect from Microsoft. So the way that it works is a user today would open up their iPadOS or iOS, and they would log into any application the same exact way as they log in their personal use, or if it's a BYOD device. The only difference is that once you have set up shared device mode through Intune and deployed it to the device, as well as putting the Authenticator app on that device, when that user signs into, say, Teams, that sign-in is automatically going to be used for all the applications on the device that support shared device mode. We have many Microsoft first-party apps who have worked with us and who have integrated MSOL, the Microsoft Software Authentication Library. And we also allow third-party individuals to put it in their own line of business applications. So this is a comprehensive solution that we think will be able to answer most of the pressing needs for FLW scenarios today. And in the future, if shared iPhone comes out as well, then it allows us to answer even more potential scenarios in that space. But we're pretty comfortable with, like Arnab said before, we have been pushing out innovation consistently in this space over the past few months. You see new applications onboarding every month or so. And by no means is this, we're putting our hands up and saying we've completed the job. We're continuing to invest in this. So we think that frontline workers are extremely important. And this is somewhere that we hope to, and frankly, we expect to be a leader in terms of management moving forward.
Cool. I love that. All the work that we're doing. When I started with Intune 2 years ago, we were really starting to really focus on frontline worker, and we continue to do that today. And I love where we're going to help the that we call FLW, but the frontline worker scenario. Oh, so we have a question from Alex, and we've talked a couple of times already in the last 30 minutes or so about platform SSO and what's coming with macOS and what's coming with Apple. And Alex is asking, when will platform SSO for Mac be available to allow for synchronized login credentials between Azure and the device? And how is this going to impact the enrollment?
Great question, and one I'm happy that someone brought up. So platform SSO is something that is being actively worked on, and it will be available in private preview, I believe in mid to late July. So it is going to be available soon. And when it is released, we are going to blog about it and let you know how you can participate. And to answer the question about how this will impact device enrollment, it is not going to impact device enrollment as it is today. It is simply going to add on a layer of device configuration, which is how Platform SSO gets turned on. So Platform SSO is really built on top of the single sign-on extension framework that Apple announced, I think, a few years back, and really they have been building on top of that. They started with making single sign-on for apps easier and having a single place for apps to do authentication when they are required for the cloud identity provider. And this is really them taking it to the next step where now the SSO will apply not just within the apps, but also to the local account that you're signing in. And so that is going to be out in the mid to late July timeframe, so very soon. And what's more exciting to see is what I was talking about before when Joe asked me about WWDC, that Apple is continuing to build more platform SSO capabilities, including ability to log in using your cloud identity provider, so using your Azure Active Directory account right from the login window of Mac, which is a great improvement to be able to do that. And then, in addition, there are also updates to the privilege management capabilities on Mac. So previously, you had to your user could only be a full admin or a standard user, and it was really on a Mac. There are so many day-to-day activities that might prompt you for an admin password. It's just easier to give the user admin access, and Apple is giving you more granular access to that using platform SSO. So you could be more specific about whether you want the end user to be able to update app installs or any extensions or system software updates. So those are all improvements that are coming in macOS 14, and certainly we'll be looking at them and making sure those are available to you as part of the day zero support.
And you were talking about mid to late July, so that's coming up. That's soon, yeah. Some of those things you're talking about mid to late July.
Yes,
probably not everything.
Yes, right, the day zero support will roll out in the fall when macOS
Northern
14
Hemisphere fall.
Yes.
Yeah. Second half of this calendar year.
Northern Hemisphere fall.
I always have to specify that because sometimes we believe that the whole world is in the Northern Hemisphere using the same. All right. So anyway, macOS question also came in. You were talking about some scripts earlier, but is there any scope for shell script enhancements to have more granular details via the logs, like security control status is enabled or disabled? What are we doing with shell script enhancements?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd be curious to understand if this is the right answer for it. And so please follow up with another question if my answer does not fulfill what you're looking for. But using the shell script concept, we have also made available what we call custom attributes and log collection from the device. So let me tell you what those are and why I'm bringing them up. So while shell scripts are really meant for writing a custom script that can configure something on the device or monitor something on the device, the custom attributes are meant for writing a shell script that can run a query on terminal and then return a result from the device to Intune. So that could be something that you're looking for here to find the security control status in this case, which would report back the status queried on the device and return it to Intune. And if you're talking about log details, the log collection feature in Intune actually allows you to specify what are the log files that you want to collect from the device. So as long as it's a managed device, any accessible location on that device, Intune can collect the logs from using the agent and store them in Azure, which can then be downloaded in the Intune admin portal or admin console.
Thanks. I appreciate it. It was a great question. So I'm glad you got a chance to explain all that as well. We got a question from Twitter about enrollment, and the question is: account-driven device enrollment was announced at WWDC. What do you recommend for tenants today?
Yeah, I'm assuming that they're talking about enrollment, and it's a good question. We had another one that spoke to ADE before, and I guess I'll break it down as like essentially a spectrum. So on the left-hand side, imagine it's the least management as much as possible. So that's where you have your BYOD devices, where you have, you really don't want to be in the day-to-day user's life, let's say if you're an admin. And on the right, it's imagine a corporate device that's completely locked down. Imagine something like something going through shared device mode or like a shared iPad. So all the way on the left, you have MAM. MAM is something that many BYOD users use and love today. It's quite feature rich from an app level perspective. And again, if you layer MAM on the apps that your organization needs, then you really get an impressive amount of functionality. Moving on from MAM, you can then look at user enrollment, right? And user enrollment has account-driven user enrollment as well as the traditional user enrollment. And account-driven user enrollment, what it does is that it simplifies the process. It gives these end users a one-click enrollment flow, so they don't have to go through multiple screens and they don't have to go through the company portal iOS app. And moving forward, then you have device enrollment, which gives you a lot more functionality on the device. You get app takeover when it comes to device enrollment. And for device enrollment as well, we are looking at simplifying the flow so that you can use the web CP instead of forcing down the company portal iOS app, and then mid-enrollment force the end user to then open up the company portal app and download the management profiles that are required. So those are essentially the 4 different flavors of management on iOS and iPadOS devices. And in terms of what we recommend, I think the first question you need to answer is, how active do you view them as BYOD devices? Primarily, do you view them as corporate? And secondly, what is your feature set? If it's 1 or 2 apps that need some sort of management, MAM seems like a great first step. As Arnav mentioned, it can also be layered in on top of other enrollment types in case there is additional functionality that you need. And then after that, you look at, can you leverage? At Microsoft, we think that, and we're especially excited about this on the enrollment side, that we are simplifying enrollment significantly by leveraging what we call just-in-time. So just-in-time was something that only existed for those ADE deployments before. And what it is that you don't have to force down the company portal iOS app, and that when an end user enrolls, they can go through a single platform that gives them clear instructions, and there's not nearly as many steps nor as many potential hiccups for the enrollment flow. So we do recommend, whether you use user enrollment or device enrollment, that you start looking at our just-in-time solution. So that would be web enrollment for the device that replaces device enrollment, and then account-driven user enrollment replacing basic user enrollment today. And we actually have a demo showing you how easy it is to leverage web enrollment. So we can probably play that now, and I'll talk through it so that end users can see what it looks like.
Actually, can you unmute and we can start this all over again?
Yeah. Sorry, I got too excited speaking. Yeah, you all can hear me now, I imagine. So they just got the Teams application on their device, and they're logging in like they do normally. This is an end user now. And what happens is, after they log in, instead of getting an iOS app or any sort of disruption in their flow, they're just going to be taken to a website. This is now the web company portal. And once they open this web company portal in Safari, they are going to go through a relatively simple flow. You'll see all the steps outlined here. They just click continue. And then we are already downloading the management profile on the website. And then all you have to go is to settings, profile downloaded. You'll see it right here. But the real value here is that, again, it's a much more simple flow, and it's much harder for end users to end up getting confused and raising help desk tickets, which we know costs enterprises a lot of money. So once they've enrolled the certificate, the only thing that's left now is waiting for the Authenticator app to get pushed down. And we'll see that in a second. So here we're waiting for the Authenticator app to get pushed down and leverage the SSO extension that's built into iOS and iPadOS. And this is where really okay, now here you see the app installation. You click install. The Authenticator app gets pushed down. The end user does not need to touch the app at all. All they have to do now is open up Teams or any other first-party app like they do normally, and they're going to be logged in and ready to be productive. And that's it in terms of enrollment. So once they open Teams, they automatically get signed in and they can get to work. Yeah, that was just the Authenticator checking in, and now they're signed in.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love how easy we're making this. And I saw the JIT, or the just-in-time enrollment, earlier, compared to what it was before just-in-time enrollment, where you know, 30 steps or something to enroll your device, and I don't know, 7?
Well, Joe, if we had the old demo, we'd have to present it for like 30 to 40 minutes. Like the whole hour would just be the old enrollment flow. So
yeah, for sure. I mean, I keep talking about how much I love the direction we're going with Apple, all the Apple products, right? iOS, iPadOS, macOS. I love the direction we're going in Intune with that, because really, again, a few years ago, we wouldn't really have thought about being that first class macOS, iOS management product or MDM product, and we are. Today we are.
Yeah, no, and I mean, afterwards, maybe we'll ask you which is your favorite between macOS and iPadOS. And
well, I mean, I'm a Windows guy on my device, so I do have an iPhone though. And some of you, if you were here in the beginning, know that I lost my home internet access, and I'm using my iPhone as a hotspot. So I'm actually using it right now, and I don't think my internet has. I think my stream is coming through okay, even on my iPhone.
Great.
Yeah.
That's great. One thing I want to touch upon in the few minutes we have is that all the great stuff that Aman has been talking about for iOS, like just-in-time registration, this is also coming to macOS. And Platform SSO is really the first scenario where you will get a chance to take it to check it out. And in Apple device management team, our idea is really how do we build a strong platform architecture where we can really bring out the consistent experiences on both iOS and macOS. And that is really what you will see more and more. Like by taking the experience out of company portal to a web portal, we can much more easily provide a consistent experience that the user is familiar with.
Yeah, and I think we have one quick question. Sorry, Joe, you want to say?
Yeah, I was going to say we have time for one more question, and we've talked about a lot of things that are coming soon, or some of them are coming immediately, some a little bit further on down the line. For those private previews, what's the best way for our customers to enroll or to ask to be put into these private previews?
Yeah.
Oh,
go on.
So for yes, I think it really depends on the specific private preview and how it is being run. The one that I have talked about for Platform SSO, in this case, will just require a special build of company portal. So I think the easiest way to do this is if you join our Mac admin community. That is really where we will also announce when it is available and how you can get the special company portal build that you will require.
Cool. And Aman, were you also going to say?
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on the private preview itself. And again, we don't tend to stay in private preview too long. We want to keep it really locked down to a few folks, but we get into public preview very quickly. And you get to see that in what's new in the documents that Joe spoke about before. There are a lot of ways to really see what the latest and greatest is in terms of our offerings.
And the last one I'm going to give a shout out to is our Customer Connection Program. The CCP team is willing to help, and aka.ms is join CCP. I want to thank everyone for coming, for joining us. Some of you I This is the second hour that you've talked to me, and quite frankly, you've got one more hour of me right after this. But for this AMA, securely managed iOS, iPadOS, macOS endpoints with Intune, thank you so much, and we'll see you all soon.
Yeah, bye.
Thank you. Bye.